At Ritual, we know what goes into a magical holiday season. The potluck planning, the gift giving, the spreadsheets. This new year, take a moment for yourself with simple, daily rituals that help you put your foundational health at the top of your to-do list. Rituals Essential for Women 18 Plus Multivitamin is a clinically backed multivitamin featuring 9 high-quality key essential ingredients to help you fill key nutrient gaps in your diet. Or maybe you're stressing your daily protein intake, or you want to double down on support for your gut microbiome. From plant-based essential protein to 3-in-1 pre, pro, and postbiotic strains with Symbiotic Plus, Ritual helps you focus on supporting your body after a long season of juggling everybody else. And for a limited time, do it with 30% off a 3-month supply at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boy, does it smell good.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
That's good.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday. It means we're brought to you by Rouse's Markets, official supermarket of the New Orleans Saints. Working towards the weekend. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. And fired up you're with us. Let's push off the dock here. We got tons to get to over the next couple of hours. Luke Johnson going to be with us in 15 minutes. Some great sound from Miles Frazier earlier today with the folks on Off the Bench. You've done a great job all week long down there at the Senior Bowl. We got to talk a little bit about Derek Curiel. Got some really good news from him earlier today. I got to preview second base as we work around the diamond with LSU baseball, something I'm doing with LouisianaSports.net, and I'm doing with you here every day from 1 to 3 as well, so we'll get to that a little bit later. And we got to start the same way we start each and every day. We're going to do a little bit of hoops on the Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
All right, LSU loses in the Assembly Center last night. The final was 87-74. The number one Auburn Tigers win it by 13 points. And there were so many different talking points to get into from this basketball game. The start was just bizarre. Auburn had 6 offensive rebounds on their first possession. They had 9 offensive rebounds on their first 9 missed shots and did not have a point. LSU jumped out to a 6-0 lead. BMAC was buzzing a little bit. I got asked a couple times this morning how the crowd was. The students were great. They were there. They were loud. They were, they were as many students as been in a game since last season for sure. Was it a good crowd for an LSU basketball game? Yeah. Was it a great crowd for the number one team in the nation? No, I've seen Tennessee and Kentucky roll into that place, number one in the country, and it be absolutely jammed. Most of the upper was kind of sparse. There was a large assembly of Auburn fans there. I've seen Tennessee travel to the PMAC, and Kentucky travels everywhere. So I've seen more visiting fans, but a lot of visiting fans. I have not seen Ole Miss or A&M or Arkansas or Florida or anybody like that come close to what I saw from the Auburn contingent last night, and made for a pretty good atmosphere inside the PMAC. And LSU came out pretty ready to play. They were active defensively. They knocked down some shots, which they almost never do. And they took control of the game early and led by 6. And we're playing Arkansas what and what. And then what always happens, happened. And LSU just could not, under any circumstance, hold on to the basketball. They just couldn't do it. Dribbling it off their foot, getting their pocket picked, dribbling into a trap. It just constantly turning it over against a team in Auburn that is great on defense, but has not ratcheted up turnovers against their opposition like they did last night. And LSU turned the ball over 15 times in the first half alone, which allowed Auburn to separate. There was a point in the game. It was 14-9 LSU. And then over the next about 6 minutes or so, from 13:32 to 7:21. There was a 6-minute span. Auburn won that span 17-2. They flipped a 14-9 LSU lead into a 26-16 Auburn lead. And at that point, Auburn just kind of kept LSU at arm's length. I never felt sitting in the Assembly Center last night that LSU had a real chance to win the game. Even when Jordan Sears splashed a 3 for a 4-point play, came back on the next trip, hit another 3, had 7 points, cut the lead to 5. And I still am looking at this going, eh. And immediately Auburn calls timeout. They come down the floor. They throw it to Jani Broome. He gets a 3-point play. And that's just kind of what Auburn does. And that's what Auburn's done to everyone because they're really, really good. They're balanced. They're really good on offense and defense, which means they don't have to rely on one end of the floor. And they make clutch plays, which is why they've won games. It hasn't always been a work of art. They beat a bad South Carolina team by a bucket, beat a mediocre Georgia team by a bucket. We're in a tight game with a mediocre Texas team. It's not like they're beating everybody by 25, but they always win. The only time they haven't won was on the road at number 2, currently Duke. And they're probably the best team in the country. And LSU is not in that league. And because of that, every time I felt like maybe LSU would draw close enough to make Auburn sweat, Auburn did not break a sweat. Auburn instead just went right back down the floor and got a basket. I mean, I can look at the scoring here, and LSU cuts it to 6 with 12 minutes to go, and Auburn immediately pushes it to 11. LSU cuts it to 9, then it goes back to 12. LSU cuts it to 6 on a pair of Cam Carter free throws. Immediately, Jani Broome 3-point play, it's 9. LSU cuts it to 6. Boom, Jani Broome gets to the line and makes 2 free throws. LSU cuts it to 9, and immediately Johnson hits a 3 with 3.5 minutes to go, and the game's out. Every single time LSU got within kind of an arm's length, Auburn just kind of swatted them away. That's what it felt like last night. And ultimately, the stat sheet reveals LSU's nightmare every single time they go out there. 20 turnovers led to 20 Auburn points, and Auburn just absolutely flooded the offensive glass time and time and time again. They got 25 offensive rebounds, and that resulted in 20 second chance points. Now, you can get a second chance point off turnovers, so it's not what and what, but 20 second chance points and 20 off of turnovers. You're in the neighborhood 34, 36, 38, 40 points off of those two. LSU actually defended decently, and that's what we've talked about all SEC play. Like, they held Auburn to 40% shooting and 32% from 3. That's not a great night for the number 1 offensive efficiency team by some of the metrics. Top 5 by everybody. 40%, 32 from 3, like, that's just an average day. But because you can't get shots up, you can't win. LSU was outshot in this game 80-51. That is 29 shots. 29 extra shots that Auburn put up. And you offset that by a fraction because LSU shot 26 free throws to Auburn's 21. But still, 29 extra shots on offensive rebounds and turnovers. LSU outshot Auburn 47% to 40%. LSU was actually shooting the 3 ball really well, like as well as they've shot it in months. Consider the fact that LSU on threes, if I pull this up, LSU on threes missed 6 of their last 7. And they still, from the 3-point line, shot 8 of 22. So you go they were 7 of 15 from 3 before the very end of the game. And 3 of those were Trey'Dez Green playing high school ball, chucking it up when he shouldn't have been. I could make a case you were 7 for 11 on real threes that you took. And let me just be honest with you. I'll just give you a moment of honesty as I sat in the PMAC. I texted this to multiple people. It's not my proudest thing, but it is what it is. When LSU was chucking in those threes, Carter made both of his, Sears makes one, then he splashes a 4-point play and cuts it to 5, and I'm sitting there in the PMAC going, man, I really wish they weren't making these threes against Auburn because they're not going to win this game anyway. Save the made threes for Missouri and Vanderbilt. Save the made threes for South Carolina. Save the made threes for Texas A&M coming to the PMAC. Don't make them against them. You're not going to beat them. Now, that's a pathetic way to look at things, but I'm just being honest the way that I felt sitting in the PMAC watching that game. The fact of the matter is, as I stare at the court and I watch Auburn in person, you're looking at a different class of player, in my opinion, than you're looking at with LSU. They shoot it better. They're more athletic. They're longer. They're deeper. They're more balanced. They make better decisions. They're better spaced. They defend much more intensely. LSU's not bad on defense, but Auburn created chaos against LSU. And while LSU does generally hold teams to reasonably low field goal outputs, it doesn't look chaotic out there. LSU's just kind of sound. They're just kind of in front of you. They will make some things difficult at the rim, and they did that for Auburn at times. Auburn on layups was 6 for 17. Sorry, that's LSU's. Auburn was not great from layups either. Auburn was 14 of 33. So once again, well under 50% at the rim, and LSU does that sometimes, but it doesn't look as chaotic. Auburn at times looked like the varsity team scrimmaging the JV team.
At Ritual, we know what goes into a magical holiday season. The potluck planning, the gift giving, the spreadsheets. This new year, take a moment for yourself with simple, daily rituals that help you put your foundational health at the top of your to-do list. Ritual's Essential for Women 18 Plus multivitamin is a clinically backed multivitamin featuring 9 high-quality key essential ingredients to help you fill key nutrient gaps in your diet. Or maybe you're stressing your daily protein intake, or you want to double down on support for your gut microbiome. From plant-based essential protein to 3-in-1 pre, pro, and postbiotic strains with Symbiotic Plus, Ritual helps you focus on supporting your body after a long season of juggling everybody else. And for a limited time, do it with 30% off a 3-month supply at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
At practice for a high school. Like you just overwhelm them. And that's what 20 turnovers looks like. And Auburn turned it over 9 times. Auburn looks really good. I've seen really good basketball teams come through there, and that's a really good one. And LSU is kind of where we feared they would be when you walked off the court against Vanderbilt. You looked at that and you said, well, if they can't get that one, it's going to be really, really bumpy. And the fact of the matter is it's been really, really bumpy. You now look up and you're 1-6 in league play, 1-7 in league play. And now the schedule actually breaks for you a little bit, but at this point, like you've dug yourself such a massive cliff that I don't feel like anybody right now feels like this basketball team is capable of writing things the way the baseball team did last year. The baseball team was famously 3-12 at the halfway point of SEC play last year. And I threw dirt on them. I thought they were done, but you knew that they had talent, and they come out and they win the game. And they win the next game. And they win the next game. And all of a sudden, they put themselves, by going 10-5 down the stretch, in position to squeak into the NCAA tournament. And I'm not talking about the NCAA tournament right now with this team, but I will tell you that you just got off a stretch where you played at Ole Miss, then Arkansas, at A&M, at Alabama, home Auburn. That's teams that are in the top 20 in the polls. Here's what's coming up next for LSU. A game at home against Texas, which will be about a pick'em game. At Georgia, who's no great shakes. Ole Miss comes to the PMAC. I wouldn't pick LSU to win that game, but LSU played with Ole Miss for about 30 minutes in Oxford. You're at Arkansas, who's a mess. You're at Oklahoma, who's not very good. South Carolina comes to the PMAC. They hadn't won a league game. Now you finish with a nightmare. It's Florida, Tennessee, at Mississippi State, at Kentucky, and A&M. But this next stretch, it's not wild to think LSU could win 3 or 4 of them. I'm not even blowing smoke there. I told you yesterday they had no shot to beat Auburn. But this you're playing the bottom of the league here coming up. You're in the bottom of the league, but you're playing the bottom of the league. But you went so far south by not being able to beat Vanderbilt, not being able to beat Missouri, and not being able to pick off one against one of these good teams, that you're in a deep, deep hole. And they're going to keep playing and fighting and scrapping. But I'll be honest, like I could give you that 2 years ago. I could give you that last year. I'm not really in a fight and scrap and clawing mood with this team. I know Jalen Reed got hurt. I know Tyrell Ward walked out. But this is LSU. This is a major sport. I'm not going to sit after the game and go, well, they played really hard. You got to win games, and they're not winning games. And it's a bummer. I'm hopeful there's a decent crowd for a big night for a great team, the 2000 Final Four team that'll be honored on Friday at 5 o'clock. Texas comes in, good tip time. It's a home game. You're honoring a team that a lot of people have great memories of. But it just feels like, sitting in the PMAC last night, you're kind of looking at the floor going, okay, when they throwing the first pitch over there? And that's, y'all know how much I love LSU baseball. Just adore it. I love basketball too, and I want to follow a really good basketball team. Right now, you're 1-6, and you turn the ball over way too much, and you can't get on the defensive glass. And your good offensive games generally haven't been good enough, and you've only got one win to show for it in league play. So we'll see. I'll preview Texas tomorrow. We'll talk about the 2000 Final Four team tomorrow. And last night was a pretty spicy environment for a little bit inside the PMAC. But ultimately, the really, really good team held you at arm's length and won, and LSU didn't really have an answer for that. And that's pretty not surprising at this point when you consider what we've watched with this team since conference play cranked up. So that's our Genesis opening drive. Every car on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Our Thursday show is brought to you by Rouse's Markets. When we come back, let's talk to Luke Johnson. What are the Saints up to? That's next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Safety can be a big deal in the bathroom, especially as folks age. If there's someone in your life that wants to stay at home, but you feel like the bathroom could be a hazardous spot, want to try your best to mitigate against slips and falls, David Duvall and his team can help you with that. They can do non-slip floors. They can do handrails in the slippery areas. They can do walk-in showers and tubs. They can do benches and showers. All that can be beneficial to someone in your life that is aging a little bit and maybe in a hazardous situation. Do your best to mitigate against it and call David Duvall and One Bath and Closets. Go to the website, onebathandclosets.com, see pictures of their great work, and get that free consultation set up very, very soon. It's One Bath and Closets. David Duvall and his team, 30 years in the business. Go to the website, onebathandclosets.com, onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
Chugging along here on a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We're brought to you by Rouse's Markets, official supermarket of the New Orleans Saints. Speaking of those Saints, Luke Johnson covers them for The Advocate, joins us on Thursdays via the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Luke, how we doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It is our pleasure. Kellen Moore, the favorite now to be the Saints' new head coach?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're pretty much all in on him, and it really just depends on what he wants to do. But just the fact that it's even gone this long, right, and the coaching search is still ongoing, just kind of keeps continuing to point toward Kellen Moore being the guy.
Do you think it's been a mishandled or discouraging coaching search because you've heard names that have surfaced that have said thanks but no thanks, or do you think that the Saints are just doing their due diligence?
I would say not mishandled, but disappointing for sure. I mean, maybe it has been mishandled, right? We just don't know the details of why some of these candidates have basically said no thanks. The Aaron Glenn one and the Mike McCarthy one, I think, are explainable, right? Aaron Glenn clearly had his sights set on the Jets. I think you could reasonably say that was a good choice for him. The Jets have a lot of problems as an organization for sure. They have a huge question at quarterback, but they have some really appealing pieces on their roster. They're obviously in a better salary cap space. It's maybe a place where he can more easily succeed as the first-time head coach. So you get that. And the Mike McCarthy thing, they never even talked to him. So it doesn't even really feel like he was a true candidate. They wanted to talk to him, but if you're a head coach with 18 years of experience and you won a Super Bowl and you've been successful in every step of the way, and doesn't really make a huge concerted effort to come get you, then Yeah, sit it out and find a better job next year. The one that is really, kind of concerning is Joe Brady. Just basically telling him, like, I'm not even going to consider a job. I'm not going to come down for a in-person interview. That set up the red flags. So, if the Kellen Moore thing doesn't work out, and they're on to option number 5 or 6, I think even if it's somebody the Saints feel really good about, and they think they hired a really good head coach, they're going to have like a PR problem. It's going to be hard to sell that candidate when you had 5 other guys say no thank you.
What do you think the Saints find appealing about Kellen Moore?
Hey, can you repeat that, Hunt? I'm sorry.
That's all good. What do you think the Saints find appealing about Kellen Moore?
Well, I mean, he's 36 years old, and he's had a lot of success when he's been an offensive play caller. He's had 6 years as an offensive coordinator in the NFL, and 4 of those years he had a top 10 offense. So there's like proven ability there to get a really good offense going. I think the question about him is like, is he just a coordinator, or can he handle like the head coach job, which is like the question you have about any first time guy. I think you'd feel a little bit better about it with like Aaron Glenn, because he's so charismatic and like it's not readily present with Kellen Moore. But the success is there. You feel really good about that. You feel really good about the fact that a lot of the successful head coaches in the NFL right now are young offensive play callers. So, I think this would be a good hire if he accepts the job. And if he doesn't, I just think it's going to be like a hard sell to the fan base.
Is Darren Rizzi still in play here?
I think he is. If he wasn't in play, I think he already would have taken another job as a special teams coordinator. I think the Denver job is open, and they're probably waiting on what's going to happen with this. So, I mean, I don't know this for sure. Like, nobody's like telling me like, yeah, Darren's still in the mix, but I think just reading the tea leaves, it just feels like he is still like a viable candidate for them, especially if they don't have like an answer from Kellen Moore.
My issue with that is if you end up hiring Darren Rizzi, and I don't know if the Saints are considering that or not. You seem to think they very much are, and we'll see. But if they hire him and Clint Kubiak's already walked, that would suggest to me that you fell back and you thought you were going to do something different, and then you circled back and it was a little bit late.
I totally agree with that, Hunt. And that's going to be like the problem here is like if they don't get Kellen Moore and it's Darren Rizzi or Anthony Weaver or Mike Kafka, any of those guys are going to feel like a fallback option, even if they weren't. Right? Like, even if the Saints are just like, yeah, we really like Anthony Weaver, like, all those guys are going to feel like your 5th best shot. And then on top of that, they're going to have to hire a completely new staff because all the guys who were on the Saints staff are gone, or a lot of them are already. So, they really needed to be Kellen Moore.
I'm curious, you may not know the answer to this question, but I figure I'll ask. Like, you're coming up on one of the biggest drafts in recent memory for the New Orleans Saints. They've got to restock these shelves, and they've got a lot of picks. What is Darren Rizzi doing right now? Is he working for the Saints? Is he just waiting to hear back from them? I realize that you've got an entire personnel staff that's going to go to the Senior Bowl and is going to evaluate what they need to, but, like, what is Darren Rizzi doing?
As far as I know, he is at home.
Okay.
Yeah, I talked to somebody out here. I'm at the Senior Bowl. I'm actually pulling up to the stadium right now. I talked to somebody yesterday, and they said the only people the Saints have here are their college scouting department. Mickey Loomis was out here yesterday, and then they have a number of coaches who are like coaching in the actual Senior Bowl. And those are a lot of those guys are kind of like lower level assistants. It's weird to call Jari Evans a lower level assistant, but he's like the assistant offensive line coach. They have their assistant wide receivers coach out here. They have their assistant linebackers coach out here. And that's the only member of the football side of things, the coaching side of things who are out here, which is a really big departure from the way the Saints usually operate. They usually have a bunch of their staff out here. Usually for only for a day or two, but they're out here to look at the players. That's not the case this year. It's just really the college scouting staff and the guys who don't know if they're going to be on their coaching staff next year.
That's an odd spot to be in. Any idea as to timeline for this thing? Do we think that if we feel like it's Kellen Moore, they're going to have to wait to officially announce things till after the Super Bowl? Maybe a report leaks next week. I mean, how do you feel like the timeline's going to go here?
Yeah, they can't do anything officially with Kellen Moore. If he's going to be the guy, they can't do anything officially with him until after the Super Bowl. So, we'd be looking at, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after the Super Bowl. Whereas if they get a sense from Kellen Moore, that he's not going to take the job, they could announce their hire anytime, really. But I think that the longer this thing drags on, the more it points toward Kellen Moore being the guy. And he can have a soft agreement in place, like a handshake, I want to do this. And he can start kind of reaching out to guys and gauging their interest in being part of his staff and everything like that. But they can't come to any sort of real agreement on it.
Right, understood. What's your assignment over at the Senior Bowl? What are you getting into over there?
I'm trying to pretend I know ball. No, these things are always kind of tough for me because everybody's out here, they're wow, look at this guy's route stamp, and I'm just dude, whatever, you don't know what you're talking about. Let's just get our 10 minutes to talk to these guys after practice, see some interesting takeaways from what they think about their own draft prospects, and then I stay out till about 2 a.m. trying to find coaches or agents to tell me some fun stuff.
There you go. Just find some bourbon nearby. You'll enjoy yourself. All right, Luke, I appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Luke Johnson with the Advocate, Saints beat reporter over there at the Senior Bowl. I think that's kind of what we all think. I think if it's Kellen Moore, if you don't hear anything by Tuesday of Super Bowl week.
At Ritual, we know what goes into a magical holiday season. The potluck planning, the gift giving, the spreadsheets. This new year, take a moment for yourself with simple, daily rituals that help you put your foundational health at the top of your to-do list. Rituals Essential for Women 18 Plus Multivitamin is a clinically backed multivitamin featuring 9 high-quality key essential ingredients to help you fill key nutrient gaps in your diet. Or maybe you're stressing your daily protein intake, or you want to double down on support for your gut microbiome. From plant-based essential protein to 3-in-1 pre, pro, and postbiotic strains with Symbiotic Plus, Ritual helps you focus on supporting your body after a long season of juggling everybody else. And for a limited time, do it with 30% off a 3-month supply at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Probably have your answer, right? That's going to be your guy. We all kind of anticipate that there will be some sort of high-level report from a source that's got people in the agent world that says, Saints are heavily targeting Kellen Moore, something like that. It would indicate there's nothing official, but they've shaken hands, and that's going to be official pretty quickly after the Super Bowl's over. And as Luke said, if Kellen Moore kind of looks at him and goes, I appreciate the conversation, I've enjoyed it, but I think this is where I want to be for another year. Then all of a sudden you may just pivot immediately and go, all right, Mike Kafka, you're the guy. And we'll see. But as I mentioned there, they hired Darren Rizzi, and you've had some staff guys walk out the door. That just kind of shows, in my opinion, that you kept swinging and missing and then grabbed the guy off the bench. That's kind of what it feels like. But we'll see. That's our Saints update for today. If you're looking for Saints coverage, you can always find it on our Saints channels, Hunt on Saints. Started out just on YouTube, now wherever you find your podcast. So if you're looking for audio form of our shows with Saints content, you can find it, Hunt on Saints, wherever you find your sound. Speaking of sound, I thought today Miles Frazier had an awesome sit-down with T-Bob and Jake on Off the Bench. Going to play a couple of bites from that and kind of give my thoughts on it. I talked to Miles a number of times over the course of the season, and he gave some really good insight on his journey through LSU, what he's looking to do towards the to the NFL, his approach to the bowl game, and then what he thinks about next year's LSU team. So we'll do all that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is that website. If you think luxury, think Genesis. If you think luxury and you think, I can't spend that kind of money, you might be surprised. You certainly won't spend any money if you don't go check it out. You won't get a new car if you don't go check it out. It's a luxury experience at a reasonable price over there at Genesis of Baton Rouge. They're on Airline at Piku, across from Women's Hospital, and it's just a first-class operation from start to finish when you show up there. The facility is gorgeous. It's clean. It's got a great ambiance, and the staff is first class in every way as well. Their brand ambassadors are so helpful. You're going to feel like a guest, not a customer. And that's their promise to you at Genesis of Baton Rouge. Every single new purchase comes with a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty, as well as 3 years of complimentary maintenance, and that's valet maintenance. Start your process today at genesisofbatonrouge.com. See something you like, stop on by at Airline and Piku, or again, continue on the website. You never have to set foot on the lot to buy a Genesis. You can do it all at genesisofbatonrouge.com, genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
Thursday show is brought to you by Rouse's Markets. King cake season is very much upon us. If you're looking for a king cake, whether it's just to have on the kitchen counter because it's a delicious treat, or you're going out to a parade, going to a Mardi Gras themed party or a ball, whatever the case may be, and you want to have king cake, Rouse's always has you covered. You never have to worry about walking into a Rouse's and thinking, oh, they're out of king cake. Just walk into any Rouse's, right in the front of the one at Burbank and Lee, where I go a couple times a week. There's just dozens of them stacked up. They have the standard cinnamon, and they've got the flavored ones on the other side. I personally am a flavored guy. I do like a cinnamon, but I'd rather have the cream cheese filling there. But they have tons. They're going to bake 600,000 of these during carnival season. So if you're looking for king cakes, be sure and stop on by a Rouse's. As you well know, the guys from Off the Bench at the Senior Bowl all week this week, Monday through Thursday. Incredible content from there in Mobile. Just talked to a ton of guys. They were at practice, giving a lot of takes. It sounds like the LSU guys are performing exceptionally well, and Miles Frazier is certainly included in that bunch. He sat down with Jacob and T-Bob this morning, and I thought it was a really, really well done interview by the guys, and it was awesome by Miles as well, which is not surprising because I talked to Miles Frazier on a number of occasions during the season, during midweek player interviews, and he was always insightful and thoughtful with his answers. And he was again today, and I've got a piece coming up on LouisianaSports.net later this afternoon that kind of ties it all together, but I thought it was worth chatting about here on the show as well. So we'll start on kind of his focus as he went to the bowl game, played tackle there, and now he's at the Senior Bowl. He's playing guard and tackle in the Senior Bowl, and really showcasing a complete game. And he could have sat out the bowl game, didn't have to go to the Senior Bowl, but he's laced up the chin strap and gone out there to compete all of December and now through January as well. And this is kind of his focus.
Biggest focus was making sure the young guys took that next step in terms of being self-motivated and just taking extra work, just maximizing their full potential while I was there. Then my second thing was to show that I could play tackle. So I got with Coach Davis and Coach Cliff, and we did a lot of tackle sets, stances. First I had to figure out my stance, then I had to figure out what side I was more comfortable with, and then we did a lot of indie, additional to practice, separate film and things like that, and I think that really helped.
So that was him in December. Like, you remember, like, Will Campbell opted out, Emory Jones opted out, Garrett Dellinger still hurt, didn't want to push it. He's out there at the Senior Bowl today. So 3 of the guys that he had started a bajillion games with over 3 years said, we're going to sit. And Miles Frazier said, no, I'm going to play. And it wasn't just, let me try to play tackle and guard. He also said, I wanted to make sure that the guys that are younger than us understood that they were next and they needed to step up, and I could help them with that. So he worked on his job at the right tackle spot, got with Brad Davis and did a lot of post-practice work on play and tackle. And then he talked about working with the younger guys. You had to bring along Bo Bordelon and bring along Paul Mabenga and bring along Tyree Adams. And those guys had to step in and play. And ultimately, in the bowl game, LSU did not allow a sack and ran the ball for 120 yards or so and rolled up 44 points with some help from the special teams and the defense, who both scored in that game. But Frazier talked about the buy-in that they got from the younger players as they all kind of prepped in December to play in this bowl game.
Those guys bought in. They knew there was a void. They knew at first in the beginning of practices, it was different. But as they bought into like their potential, I feel like in a quick period, because it was only like 2.5, 3 weeks of that first practice of the bowl game, like they bought into the bomb squad way, and they embodied it in the game. Like they did phenomenal, and I'm proud of those guys. Like for real, like those guys are taking the next step. Just like I'm taking the next step here, they're taking the next step on the field, and those guys are going to dominate the SEC next year.
Going to dominate the SEC next year. I would like that. That'd be a really, really good thing, and we'll get to more on that in a second. But the other interesting avenue that T-Bob and Jake explored with Miles Frazier was his desire to play for LSU. He's a kid from New Jersey who started his collegiate career for 2 years at Florida International and then entered the portal and came to LSU. It's often you hear of a guy from the West Bank in New Orleans or the Acadiana area that really wants to play at LSU. Maybe they're from Zachary. I've always wanted to play at LSU. That makes a lot of sense. Guy from New Jersey, you don't hear that all that often. And the question is why did you always want to play at LSU as a guy from New Jersey who went down to Florida and ended up coming to LSU? And I thought the answer he gave was really insightful from his perspective, and also kind of lends an eye toward what LSU tries to accomplish on the national stage with branding.
They show you on the visits, like in the little theater room and all that. Yeah. But nothing compares to actually experiencing it. So like, it definitely, like this definitely is my dream. Reese's Bowl, the NFL, LSU, all that. And it's a blessing that everything is like coming to fruition.
And it was his dream, and it all came to fruition. And it was all planted in watching LSU and watching the brand that LSU has cultivated over the years, which includes the guys that are in the media.
Everyone that goes to LSU is just so high on LSU and just, oh my gosh, forever LSU, go Tigers, wearing wristbands, like everybody who's in the league and everyone who's in the media and just everyone in general, different sports and stuff like that. So I was wondering why the culture was so strong. So I actually waited in the portal to get LSU, and that was the specific school that I wanted to go to. And then once I got the call, like it was a no-brainer.
That's interesting, because that's what I talk about often. I mean, how many times have y'all heard me talk about this run LSU's been on with Burrow and Chase and Jefferson in the national championship, and then you got Angel Reese and Kim Mulkey in the national championship, and Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz in the championship, and Livy Dunn in a championship, and Jaden Daniels and Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors and championships, and the whole NIL thing and the documentary and all of that, coupled with the fact that you turn on ESPN and there's Ryan Clark, and you turn on ESPN and there's Booger McFarland, you turn on ESPN and there's Marcus Spears, and if you turn on a baseball game, which I don't know if Miles Frazier does or doesn't, but there's Ben McDonald, and like it's a very powerful brand. And in the era of NIL, I understand that that's oftentimes going to be the hook. Often it's going to be who's paying what. Often. But I'm never going to dismiss that, because one, it means a lot in the state for players to grow up here and play for LSU. Doesn't mean it's a lock every time, but it does mean something. And two, that's a kid from New Jersey who was in high school when Joe Burrow was lighting it up and decided, man, like, I'd like to hear about that. Like, what's the deal down there? Why are they so... And I'm sorry, like, this is not just me living in Baton Rouge and covering LSU. Auburn doesn't have that. I'm sorry, they don't. Texas A&M does not have that. They do not. I don't think Michigan has that. I don't think Miami has it. I think there are some that do. Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas. But, like, it's not a lot. And LSU has it. And even those schools I just rattled off, they may have one here, there, one more football games in LSU or one more recent national championship or whatever the case may be. But if you encompass all the sports, I don't know that anybody's done it quite as good as LSU has. And some of that's a little bit of luck with the massive personalities and with just kind of the things that have come together. Nobody really knew who Jaden Daniels was. Nobody knew who Joe Burrow was. Paul Skeens wasn't Paul Skeens. But it still matters. And that right there was an answer that was like, that actually proves the point I've been trying to make, that like this brand is really special outside of the state of Louisiana. It's not always going to work. NIL is a big, big deal. But it did work there with Miles Frazier. So now he moves on. Garrett Dellinger moves on. Will Campbell moves on. Emory Jones moves on. And LSU's got to remake their entire offensive line. And Miles Frazier was kind of asked, like, all right, you spend some time with these guys in December, and you feel like they're ready to take the next step. And he gave an answer like, hey, y'all better watch out.
I talked to Nuss the other day, like 2 days ago, and like I told him like it's up this year. Like a lot of people count LSU out, and like me, I don't really talk on the media and say what like all kind of stuff like that. But like it's up. Like at the end of the day, that bomb squad unit with Nuss, and then the defensive side with Perk, Witt, and all them, it's gonna go crazy.
He feels pretty good about LSU. Now, look, Miles might have a little bit of bias there. I'm not going to hold that against him. But he feels like Brad Davis is going to do the job that needs to be done with the talented youngsters that they've got. And they brought in, obviously, 2 Power 5 starters out of the transfer portal as well. So if they can block next year, they're going to score a lot of points because they got a quarterback who can sling it, and they've got some weapons around that should be really, really special. But keep in mind, and I'll say this a lot in August. I promise. It's coming. So just get ready. That offensive line was better than most LSU fans want to give it credit for. I know it wasn't perfect. But I'm just telling you, they were better than you give them credit for if you think that was an overrated unit that can't do anything. They were really good in pass blocking. They didn't do the job in run blocking sometimes. But there are going to be points during next season where you think, kind of wish I had the Campbell and Frazier kids back. Emory Jones doing all right. I mean, LSU is rolling on the offensive line, according to those that are there in the Senior Bowl. It's been a phenomenal week for a lot of those guys, Miles Frazier included. So thought that was interesting. I'll have the story written up on LouisianaSports.net later this evening. It's actually written, but we're going to wait to post it here for a couple of hours. All right, let's come back and close out hour number 1. A freshman LSU baseball player got dubbed SEC Freshman of the Year. Tell you who that is coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com is the website. I was just bragging on T-Bob and his interviewing skills that got all those Miles Frazier quotes. I'll brag on him again. He always talks about loving the springtime because he goes outside, hangs out with the kiddos, and listens to LSU baseball outside. It's one of his favorite things to do with the youngsters. You can be like T-Bob. You don't have to necessarily do everything that T-Bob does, but you can listen to baseball outside if you get your outdoor entertainment area wired by Audio Video Security Solutions. They're happy to hang an outdoor television for you as well. Bring your game watching and entertainment experience outdoors with the folks at Audio Video Security Solutions. They can handle that. It's the audio, the video. They can also handle security systems as well. I give you Mitchell Fisher's cell phone number each and every day. He's the point man. He's the owner of the company. He's going to tell you what's going to be done. He's your point person. He's the owner. What's better than that? It's 225-439-7920. 225-439-7920. It's Audio Video Security Solutions. You can find them online at avssla.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Rouse's Supermarkets.
All right, wrapping up hour number 1 here on a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We're brought to you by Rouse's Markets. Got a busy hour number 2 coming up. We'll start the hour giving you a preview of second base at LSU. That'll, of course, be a new look this year with Stephen Milan playing the majority of last year at second base, now moving to the left side of the infield. What does second base look like for LSU? We'll open up the hour with that. We'll talk with Chris Blair at 2:15. So we still got plenty to do here on a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, but we'll close out hour number one here with a little bit of baseball news. D1 Baseball, the team over there, they're putting their preseason All-American list, preseason All-Conference list together, and today they tabbed one of LSU's freshmen, the preseason Freshman of the Year in the Southeastern Conference. That's Derek Curiel. I have got to figure out if it's Curiel or Curiel. I think I'll figure that out pretty quickly here when I get out to the box. I think it's Curiel, but I don't know that for sure. Got to get it figured out. Either way, he's the preseason Freshman of the Year in the conference, according to D1 Baseball, and I think this is a great pick. Curiel is a guy, I think a lot of you know his story. As a freshman and sophomore, he was already tall, and he was a great player, Team USA guy, and he was thought of as the best prospect of his age in the country. And he never got a lot taller, still 6'1", 6'2", and he hasn't really filled out. He actually told me that on the air, that he just hasn't grown into his man body. And so there wasn't a lot of power in his profile in high school. He runs pretty well. He's a good defender. He's a great contact hitter, but he didn't grow into a lot of power. And that, I think, backed some Major League Baseball organizations off of him early on in his draft prep there as a junior and senior. And he decided, look, I've got this frame, I've got this ability, I'm going to get bigger, I'm going to get stronger, I'm going to be a better prospect for the major leagues in 3 years after college than I am right now. I'm going to go to school. So he pulled his name out of the draft and showed up at LSU. Well, he showed up at LSU with a vengeance. He hit in the fall, according to Mark Etheridge, D1 Baseball, who I'm confident has spoken to Jay Johnson about this team to do his previews on the squad. And they listed his fall batting average at .388 with a .522 on base percentage, getting on base more than half the time. That is sensational as an adjustment from high school baseball to college baseball. Now, Curiel, either way, has played a lot on the Showcase Series, played Team USA. Like, he's played a high level in Southern California. So his adjustment is going to be easier than, and I'm not like throwing bars, but they usually have a lot of good players. Like, than if you play for Parkview, like, and you're playing against, the U Highs, and you're playing local Baton Rouge baseball, like, that's going to be a pretty big jump to go to LSU and start facing guys that are throwing 97. But Curiel, lots of experience facing high level pitching, and he handled himself really well in the fall. You've heard the famous stories. Mikey Matuk had a bad fall. Stephen Milam's bad fall last year. Like, freshmen having bad falls in great freshman years is not anything new. But freshmen having great falls is eye-opening. And Cade Arambidi and Derek Curiel had great falls, and I think are both in line to start multiple games in the first week or two of the season. I think it's possible that Curiel's the best outfielder on LSU's team right now. I think that's possible. And certainly the folks at D1 Baseball think that. That's why they've named him the SEC's preseason Freshman of the Year. As far as the profile, I think he's going to be I don't mean an average like good or bad. I mean batting average hitter. He's going to hit the ball really hard. He's going to roll up a high batting average, I think. I think the power is going to come later in Curiel's career at LSU, and that's okay. You don't have to hit a ton of home runs as a freshman. The power came late in the freshman year for Stephen Milam, really towards the SEC tournament and the regional. And I think that you could see a progression like that maybe a year down the road with Derek Curiel. But the defense is good. The athleticism is good. It's a great left-handed swing, flat, hits the ball hard. And I think it's a great honor for him and a great representation of LSU's freshman class. It was ranked as good as anybody in the countries, and I think you're going to see a number of guys from that class really pop. Curiel, Cade Arambidi, Kason Evans, William Schmidt. I mean, there are a lot of guys in this class. Talked yesterday about Ryan Costello. They got a lot of really good players in this class, and Curiel certainly is one of those, and he is picked as the preseason SEC Freshman of the Year by D1 Baseball. So excited to see what Derek Curiel's got in store in his first campaign in Baton Rouge. That's it for hour one here on a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. 600,000 king cakes at Rouse's. They bring you our Thursday shows. Looking for a king cake? Get on by Rouse's and get yours today. If you missed any of the first hour, you can catch catch it on demand, 1045ESPN.com's on-demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Wherever you find your sound, you can always find us. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. You can also search Hunt on LSU for our LSU football. You can search Hunt on Saints for our Saints football. You can search Hoops with Hunt for our basketball. And we did all of that in the first hour. Opened up with LSU and Auburn last night from the PMAC. Luke Johnson from the Senior Bowl talking all things Saints, whether things stand with Kellen Moore. And we had some sound from this morning's OTB chat with Miles Frazier that I thought was really, really good. If you want to read about Miles, you can a little later this afternoon on LouisianaSports.net. Plenty to do in hour number 2. Chris Blair's with us in 20 minutes talking some hoops. And then we'll preview second base when we come back after Sports Center. It's a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.